All right, guys, I'm about to go live here. Actually, I am going live already. We're going to talk about Snapchat in a second. Just got to quickly move a couple things around here, and then we're going to talk about this. Happy Friday, by the way. Happy Friday. I do think Snapchat's going to give us an opportunity here. That's pretty interesting. So we'll talk about this here in just a second. In fact, I need to quickly put on these headphones so you guys can hear me better. Let's plug these in. All right. How is the audio now? Is this audio better? Yes? No? You don't care? I'm hoping you can hear me. Anyway, so we'll talk about Snapchat. Just give it a couple of minutes. Okay, I'm getting some thumbs up. Good. Good. Happy Friday. Give it a couple of minutes for people to trickle in. And then we'll talk about Snapchat. I do think there's some opportunity here. So we'll do this. First, let me turn this around. All right. Here we go. Snapchat. Oopsie. Snapchat. Okay. Okay. You guys ready to talk about this? There we go. I promised you guys last time that we would start doing it on this monitor, and I'm just too lazy to turn it on. So, anyway, the opportunity in Snapchat. Let me just give you a little bit of perspective before we look at the charts. So, what tends to happen, and this doesn't happen all the time, but a lot of times what you get is when you have a hot IPO like a Snapchat, like you had Twitter, Facebook, all these names, and you can go back in time, and there's plenty more, obviously. Psychologically, a lot of the hype kind of gets eaten up within the first few weeks. Again, not always, but plenty of time that happens. And so once that's out of the way, the stock just kind of starts to flounder. The other thing that you have to understand, in my experience, what tends to happen with these kind of stocks is they first have to be kind of proven. So they have to prove themselves to investors. And Snapchat was a classic case where investors just weren't quite sure yet. I mean, now there are some social media stocks out there. It wasn't like it was the first one like Facebook or Twitter. Now we've had a few. So Snapchat, there was some valuation basis for it. But still, I think people have to get their head around it because Snapchat is a different beast from Twitter, from Instagram, and from Facebook. It really is a different thing if you really think about it, from not only the way it works, but also the way the advertising being displayed. It's also a different demographic. It's a very young demographic. So it's a different beast. Now, from a fundamental perspective, people first have to get their head around this kind of a stock. But also from a technical perspective, and that's kind of what I'd like to show you guys. So let's turn this around. Let's see here. Okay. So first, let's kind of set a little bit of a history here for, so you guys can see that I'm not just making this up. But, obviously Snapchat, basically rallied for a couple days and that was it. But if you look at some other names in this space that had IPOs, at this point a number of years ago, you can see, I'm going to make a plain white chart because the moving averages don't really matter right now. I just bought some Twitter, just in full disclosure, just so you know. But here's Twitter, right? So again, we had a bit of a rally first, and then we sold off pretty quickly for a while. And then in Twitter was an interesting case. We actually had a big rally, and then sort of the real malaise started setting in. The point is, for the first couple months, usually it's even more than that, maybe 3, 4, 5 months, these kind of stocks need to get into a rhythm, both from a fundamental perspective as well as from a technical perspective, right? So look at Groupon, for example. I'm just going through a couple of names. We'll look at Groupon, so you can see that one as well. That one basically popped for, literally one day, and then that was it. It just got into a big funk. So these stocks need time to get into a rhythm for investors to figure out how they tick, what the business model is, how sticky the money, the investors actually are in a name like this. Same thing for something like Yelp, right? You might know Yelp. It's one of those services that offers, like restaurant information and that kind of stuff. And Yelp too, it just kind of didn't do a whole lot for a while, and then it had a big rally, and then that was kind of the trade. And then over time, it started getting, less and less interesting for investors, and the stock just kind of, fell all the way back. So when it comes to Snapchat, or let's talk about Facebook real quick first as well, because Facebook might resemble most closely, at least thus far, what Snapchat might be doing. So with Facebook, you can see we basically rallied on the first day of its IPO in 2012, and then we very quickly fell apart, and we didn't find a bottom until later on that year in September actually, and then we kind of built the bottom, and it took until that. I remember this quarter very well. This was the July conference call in 2013, or the July earnings report in 2013. And that's when things really started changing. I mean, people really started believing in that story. You can see there was a big, meaningful up gap at the time in Facebook. And I think for Snapchat, we're going to need something like that. I remember when Facebook started selling off here and it got to levels where people were getting interested from an IPO level perspective and all that stuff. And I think Snapchat's going to be the same story. I know a lot of people, unfortunately, that were very bullish on Snapchat over the past few weeks, and they held a lot of stock right through the earnings report, and they're getting decimated now. And I said, listen, if you have a little bit of historic perspective on these kind of stocks, you don't do this kind of stuff, because that's what I consider gambling. So what do you do now with Snapchat? Well, first of all, it depends on your time horizon, right? If you're a long-term investor, I think for sure this is an opportunity to buy a little bit of stock here. I think we're going to see a whole bunch of big brokerage houses and bigger asset managers come out and give us some bullish comments. It's going to take some time for the bears to kind of shake this one off, or the bulls to shake this one off, because they just got clipped to the tune of 27% yesterday. So at this point, I do think this is going to be one of those things where it just needs time. So if you're a long-term investor, I do think there's an opportunity to buy some. If you're a near-term, investor or trader, like an active trade investor, I don't think there's a whole lot to do. What I'm probably going to do at some point for the next week or two is I might leg into a little bit of the stock. I have no long exposure yet. And then depending on how it starts acting, if it starts building a bottom, and it usually does take time on a stock like this, I might go ahead and start buying some. I might start going ahead and buying some call spreads and things like that. Depending on how the stock acts. So again, a lot of people got really, really hurt in the stock, and it's not surprising, because people are greedy and they think stock like this only goes straight higher after their IPO, and that's just not the reality. That's not how things work. So anyway, that's about all I wanted to tell you guys for Snapchat. Just a little bit of perspective, mostly just a warning sign to remain patient. I do think ultimately the story will work out for Snapchat, but it's just going to take some time. So to me, I hadn't touched the stock at all, and I'm just now looking to kind of see if there might be an opportunity here over the next couple of weeks to buy some stock, and then maybe start seeing if there's an opportunity to start looking at the options market if the liquidity is right. So I will start looking at that at some point in the future. Right now, the liquidity in the options market is good. So anyway, do you guys have any questions on this or any comments, or are we good? Thumbs up, thumbs down. You're not listening anymore. Anyway, that's it for me, guys. I hope this makes sense. Have a great weekend. I will see you guys back here next week at some point. Help us spread the word. We're trying to do more of these Facebook Live things. We got to start spreading the word, though. Otherwise, it's not really sustainable, and we'll just make it available for Clubhouse members. But anyway, have a good rest of your day. Have a good weekend. I'll see you guys next week.